kids, welcome back to this week's Children's Ministry Online. Let's get into our worship dancing, our story for today, and a craft.
Romans 8:37. We are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. Through Him who loved us. We are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. Through Him who loved us. What can separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus? What can separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus? What can separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus? Nothing, 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 yeah! Yeah! We are more than conquerors. Yeah, yeah, yeah! We are more than conquerors. Here we go. We are more, that's right, than conquerors. Through Him who loved us. Through Him who loved us. We are more than conquerors. Through Him who loved us. Through Him who loved us. Here we go. What can separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus? What can separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus? What can separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus? Nothing, 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 yeah! Yeah! We are more than conquerors. Yeah, yeah, yeah! Romans 8:37. We are more than conquerors. Break it down. We are more, that's right, than conquerors. Through Him who loved us. Through Him who loved us. We are more than conquerors. Through Him who loved us. Through Him who loved us. Here we go. What can separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus? What can separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus? What can separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus? Nothing, 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 yeah! That's right! We are more than conquerors. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We are more than conquerors. Now come on! Are we more than conquerors? Yeah, let me hear you. Hey, hey. That's right. We are more than conquerors. Yeah, yeah. Romans 8:37. Romans 8:37.
I can't help but feel a little down, a little worried when I look around. That's why my hope is in the Lord. I fix my eyes upon the God who gives, 'cause all I need is what I have in Him. That's why my hope is in the Lord. My hope is in the Lord. I belong to Him. He will never let me go. little down, a little worried when I look around. That's why my hope is in the Lord. I fix my eyes upon the God who gives, 'cause all I need is what I have in Him. That's why my hope is in the Lord. My hope is in the Lord. I belong to Him. He will never let me go. My hope is in the Lord. I can count on Him. My hope is in the Lord. My hope is in the Lord. I belong to Him. He will never let me go. My hope is in the Lord. I can count on Him. My hope is in the Lord.
All right, our story for today is from the Jesus Storybook Bible, and it is called The Warrior Leader, which is the story of Joshua and the Battle of Jericho from Joshua 3 and 6. After Moses died, God gave his people a new leader. His name was Joshua, which means the Lord saves. Joshua was going to lead God's people into the special land that God had promised to give them.
Joshua, this is the voice of God. If you follow what I say, you shall be rewarded with the promised land I have promised.
By this time, God's people had been wandering around in the baking desert for 40 years. So you can imagine how sick they were of sand and anything yellow and tents and walking and being hot all the time. And how happy they were to reach the edge of the desert and to see their beautiful new home right in front of them, all cool and green and lovely. There was just one problem: Jericho. Jericho was a city, but it wasn't just any old city. It was a fortress, and it stopped anyone from getting into the land. The people looked at Jericho, at the big, giant, scary walls all around it, at the tall, towering ramparts, at the heavy iron gates bolted shut at each other. What would they do? No one knew, but God knew. And God told Joshua what to do. But Joshua must have looked surprised, because it was a very odd battle plan indeed, as we'll soon find out. Then God made his people a promise. I will always be with you, and I will never, ever leave you. If you do what I say, your lives in the new land will be happy, and everything will go well. So Joshua gathered his army together. They had their swords and spears and shields. They were ready to fight. But the plan wasn't about fighting. It was about trusting and doing what God had said. Joshua's army went marching around the city, day after day after day. They're too scared to fight, the people in Jericho said. But they were wrong. God's people weren't scared. They were waiting for God to tell them what to do next. On the seventh day, God told his people to march around the city not once, but 7 times. Then God told everyone to make as much noise as they could. Has anyone ever told you to make a noise as loud as you possibly can? Well, imagine that noise, but add 39,999 people to that, and you get the idea. It's ear-splitting. And as it turned out, stone splitting too, because the huge, strong walls of Jericho just crumbled to the ground, as if they were made of sand. Jericho vanished in a great cloud of dust. So it was that God's people entered their new home, and they didn't even have to fight to get in. They only had to walk. Joshua said, "God has brought you safely here. Now, will you do what he says?" Everyone said, "We promise." "Only God can make your heart happy," Joshua said. "So don't pray to pretend gods." "No," they said, "never." I'm afraid they didn't keep their promise. They didn't do what God said, and many years later, just as God had warned them, things would go badly for God's people. They would lose their home, enemies might capture them and take them off as slaves, and God's people would scatter into many different lands. But God's plan was still in the working. One day, he would give his people another leader and another home. But this home, no one could ever take from them. Such a great story about how if we just listen to Jesus or listen to God when he's telling us to do something, he can just make anything happen and all things happen, things that we couldn't even imagine. And that's just so powerful and so encouraging for us to know as we go through our day-to-day life. Well, let's get into our craft. All right, let's get into our craft. So we'll start out with the supplies that we will need. For today, we just need one piece of paper. I have some glue, a pair of scissors, a ruler, and I have a popsicle stick. If you don't have a popsicle stick, some alternatives could be just a pencil or a regular stick or just something. We're gonna be just taping a piece of paper onto this and just moving it around. So it can really just be anything that you can tape or glue onto your piece of paper. And then we just need our handy dandy coloring stuff. So not a whole lot, but just a couple of things. So while you all grab that stuff, I'll meet you back here when you're done. Okay, so we are going to get our one sheet of paper and then we're going to grab our ruler. Now we'll put it up against our piece of paper, and if you have regular size paper, it'll be 8.5 by 11. So when you put it up against, you can see it is 11 inches this way. So we are going to take a pen or a marker and we are going to mark at the 5.5. So the 5.5 on that side, and then we'll do the same thing over here. 5.5, perfect. Okay, so now that we have marked that, we're going to put our ruler up just like that against both of the lines. And then we're just gonna draw a straight line, but we're not gonna go from one end to the other. We're actually, if you put it up where the ruler is, you're actually going to be going from the 2 all the way to the 6.5. So go ahead and draw a line from 2 inches all the way to 6.5. And just in case you can't see that with my pen, we'll do that with the marker. Perfect, 2 to 6.5. So now, right above that, we are going to, so we'll take our ruler and we'll go up just a little bit. And so you can see it's about halfway through my ruler. And then we're going to go from 2 to 6.5 again, just right there. So now This top line is what we're going to be drawing our Jericho. So the city and the walls of Jericho is going to be drawn in here, okay? And then this line we're just gonna keep straight like that. So how I'm going to draw the walls of Jericho is almost kind of like a castle, because it was kind of all made from bricks, and they had windows in it, kind of like a castle, just so they could see who was coming. So that's kind of how I'm going to draw it, and you can watch the designs that I make, and you can copy me, or you can do something different, just however you'd like to draw those walls of Jericho. Okay, so you see that I have made my Jericho walls, and I actually went a little bit farther when I was drawing on them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand my black line just a little bit more. That way I know that it is as long, if not a little bit longer, of the walls of Jericho. Because what's going to happen is we're going to cut this line so that it's an open slot, and then we're going to cut out our walls of Jericho, and we're going to slide it in and out of this little slit, and that's going to be the walls tumbling down. So now that you have that, go ahead and cut out your walls of Jericho, but keep this line, don't cut that out just yet. Okay, so now once you have cut this guy out, you can just put it up against your line, make sure that it'll fit through there, and it does. So now this gets a little bit tricky. So we don't want to cut this part or this part. All we want to cut is this black line. So how you can do that is you just make a little folded line, and then you just make a cut right along that black line, and then you can unfold it, and then you go in where you made that cut like this, and then you can cut the rest of the black line once you are in there. And you'll just cut all the way to the end of the black line. Perfect. And if you need some help with that, I'm sure you can ask your parents. After that, you can kind of see the brown and the black. So I'm going to actually flip it over. And this is kind of just a little blank slate. You can still kind of see the black lines over, but it's a little bit different than this side. So now what we're going to do is we'll make sure that this fits, goes right in between, just like that. Perfect. So what we're going to do on the bottom of here is we are going to draw as many people as we would like, just screaming and shouting, because that was what eventually got the walls to drop, is they walked around it 7 times, the walls of Jericho, and then on the 7th time they shouted, they blew on horns, they made all these kinds of noises, and the walls just came tumbling down. So we want to represent all the people screaming and shouting and blowing on horns. So go ahead and draw these people however you would like. If you would like to see an example, there'll be one on the side of this that you can look at to be able to copy or just draw with. Okay, once you have drawn all the people that you want, now I'm going to take our popsicle stick and I'm just going to glue it onto our Jericho wall. So just onto the back of it like this. So go ahead and glue your popsicle stick to your Jericho wall. All right, while we let that dry, I am going to write just right below this line that we have cut, and the walls came tumbling down. And that is just a really cool reminder of the things that God can do. So you can choose whichever color you'd like. I'll use brown. Perfect. Once you have done that, now you take this slit and you take the walls of Jericho and you just slide them in there like that. And now with your popsicle stick, you can sing Joshua fit the battle of Jericho and the walls came tumbling down. And you can just bring the walls of Jericho all the way down. And that is our craft for today. Just like that. Well, I hope that you enjoyed today's craft, and we will see you all next week. Thanks for watching this week's Children's Ministry Online. Remember to show us some of the crafts that you've made by going on to our Facebook page of Calvary Chapel Community Church and going to our community tab. Well, we hope that you all have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.